Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 43 of Code Lyoko, XANA's Kiss. If you're wondering about the Dairy Queen symbol, it's because these are my pajamas. I used to work at Dairy Queen and I use this shirt as pajamas now, but that's another thing altogether. We're here to talk about Code Lyoko, and by the name of the episode, it involves kissing. In this episode's case, XANA's newest plot is essentially divide and conquer, as they put it. What he does is that, since XANA can't control individual members of the Lyoko group, this time around, he decides to create, he instead creates what they call a polymorphic clone. Essentially, think the Yumi clone from Season 1, except this thing can shapeshift. Essentially, it can transform into literally anybody. And what XANA does is that he makes sure that, in full view of corroborating witnesses, especially the Lyoko group, the clone goes up to different people and kisses them, disguised as someone in the group. First it disguises itself as Jeremy and kisses a girl named Heidi in front of Odd and Ulrich. Then after that, it turns into Yumi and kisses Herb and kisses no, not Herb. He kisses some other guy. I forgot his name. And then likewise it turns into Ulrich and kisses Sissy, etc., etc. It's always in the view of someone that can corroborate it. Like William was there with the Yumi clone, or when Jeremy was there when it kissed Sissy, etc., etc. And it's pretty much just causes strife between the group as there's just general distrust with each other. Like, for example, Odd was actually set to go out with Heidi. But then when they saw the clone disguised as Jeremy kissing her, it pretty much made them go, "What the hell?" And likewise, when Aelita hears about it, she is, well, ticked, and she kind of does that thing that girls do where they don't say anything, but they kind of distance themselves from you, and so Jeremy just gets the cold shoulder. But more strife continues to build as more things continue happening. Just finally coming to a head when Aelita finally is ready to talk to Jeremy and let him explain. She sees the clone disguise itself as her, kisses Herb when Jeremy's watching, and he just freaks out at her, which I don't think is a justified response considering the accusations going around. But maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know. I feel like that with everything going on there, I think people should see a pattern. But thankfully, shortly after that, Jeremy does get an alert on his computer that a tower's been activated, and he's able to finally put the pieces together as he realizes that XANA is the one responsible for all this, and they were able to surmise that it's a polymorphic clone. However, Jeremy realizes that he screamed that what he said to Aelita got to her, and they don't know where she is. So Jeremy makes a guess and figures out that she's at the Hermitage estate. And so he goes to reach her, but unfortunately the clone got there first. And again, more clever playing on Xana's part. When Aelita's at her most emotional weakest, the clone disguises itself as Jeremy, goes to her and pretty much explains the whole situation, saying there's Xana's created a polymorphic clone. It's the one responsible for all this. We gotta go to the factory and deactivate the tower. It's again clever thinking, and considering that it doesn't know that the group has figured everything out, it ultimately thinks that Aelita will be going in alone. But again, thankfully the group arrives, and Aelita is able to figure out which one is which because the clone kissed her. And when the group arrives, Aelita is able to figure out that who's the real Jeremy, because Jeremy would never do something like that. He's kind of too much of Jeremy. And he's Jeremy. And while he obviously likes Aelita, I don't think he really has enough, to borrow a phrase, chutzpah, to actually go through with it. And before you ask, I'm not Jewish, I just use the phrase. Anyway, so yeah. The group goes to the factory while Odd stays behind to deal with the clone, and again, from there, it's typical Lyoko fare, as the group gets into Lyoko and has to deactivate the tower, encounters monsters. Like at one point, Aelita gets separated from the group to the point where the Sifo arrives. And one little minor note that I liked about this: when Odd is fighting the clone, it's shifting between forms. We don't see it but it shifts through a few forms to fight Odd before settling on Jim. But then after that, you see Odd get thrown into a room in the Hermitage estate, and then he says, "Hey, Xana, can you do me a favor? Next time, can you transform into a wimp?" And then it just transforms into Odd. It's perfect. It's a nice little bird. But otherwise, yeah, the clone, it's the fact, but yeah, otherwise, yeah, it's still standard Lyoko, it's still the standard plot from there on out. They get to the fact, they go inside, the group goes into Lyoko, Aelita almost gets her memory stolen by the Schifozoa, they manage to stop it just in time, and Aelita is able to deactivate the tower just as the clone arrives disguised as Yumi, who got devirtualized, and, well, after a brief tussle and almost dying, Aelita manages to deactivate the tower and everything is put right. As such, the episode ends with them just kind of talking about everything, but Aelita pulls Jeremy aside and says she wants to test something. Jeremy asks what it is, and then she goes in for a kiss. And at which point she just casually walks away while Jeremy's just frozen. I love it. So overall, I think this is a good episode. Part of me kind of hates the mix-up cliche as well. At the same time, I understand that it gets resolved just as quickly, but stuff like that does get to me because I don't like the frame-up kinds of stories. I've said this before in other vlogs, not this series, but other vlogs. So this kind of thing does annoy me a little bit, especially because people start to realize that there are too many people two-timing and that it seems a bit, and no one seems to make the connection. And considering that almost all the bad things in this world are caused by XANA, I think that would kind of make sense. But then again, teenagers, and I have gotten aggravated at certain characters' thickness, if you know what I mean. So I guess it kind of makes sense. But at the same time, at the same time though, I feel like the resolution felt a little rushed. At the same time, I'm glad that the group is quick to realize that all of this is XANA's fault, and they ultimately just drop whatever slight grudges they were having at the time. So I like that it's at least resolved in a rather fast-paced mention, at a fast-paced way, but at the same time, there's, like, no apologies given. Like, no one ever says, oh, I'm sorry I doubted you, or I'm sorry I said that, or sorry... No, they don't really give that. Again, it could be because they realize it's XANA's fault and their suspicions may be validated because they didn't know the full situation. But at the same time, I feel like they should still say, sorry for giving you the cold shoulder, and they would say, oh, it's fine, I understand. At least with, like, some kind of validation for that. I feel like Aelita would get off the hook a little bit more because, at the very least, she did try to hear Jeremy out. And Jeremy at least acknowledges that he kind of effed up with how he snapped at her. But at the same time, there's still no apology given. I feel like there should be something. But again, I suppose the ending does show that all is forgiven as Aelita goes, considering that Aelita went in for a kiss with Jeremy, which, yeah, I actually kind of like that. It's cute. It's nice seeing Jeremy and Aelita's relationship actually growing, as their relationship between everyone else's, I feel, is the most adorable. There's no sexual tension or will they, won't they, like with Ulrich and Yumi, but it's just them being sweet to each other and trying their best to accommodate each other. Sometimes they get sometimes they get a little annoyed at each other, but ultimately at the end of the day, they are compatible and ultimately care about each other. And yeah, like I said, Jeremy's not the kind of guy to make a move. So seeing Aelita kind of after going through all this decide, you know what, I'm going to make a move. I think that's cute. I like that. And I love Jeremy's reaction. It's just adorable. It's really adorable. So, again, I don't know what else to say. I think that another thing I could talk about is, again, the plan. Again, this episode showcases more of XANA's being smart, using subterfuge to get at the group. In this case, it's not to directly destroy them. In this case, it's something to keep them distracted while he goes forward with the plan. He didn't know that the group had figured out his plan by that point. So if they hadn't shown up when they did, he probably would have gotten Aelita where he wanted her. Because he was able, and that's another thing I like about this episode. It shows that XANA has learned. Because here's the thing, XANA is smart, sorry about that, my dog's right here, so he wants pets. As we saw when XANA has possessed people or impersonated real-life people before, he's not good at it. He approaches their personalities like a machine would. He just kind of comes at it logically, creates like an algorithm to predict their personality, etc., and just doesn't understand them. With most emotions he shows being Schadenfreude or anger. But here, it shows that his acting has actually improved. While in the polymorphic clone, while he's transformed into the various forms, he doesn't talk, just instead kissing people to try and spark emotions. At the same time, when he disguises himself as Jeremy and goes to Aelita telling her about the clone and that they need to get to the factory, it's smart thinking. He was most likely able to predict how Jeremy would react upon seeing Aelita kissing someone else, and then when he actually does go, and then he swoops in and takes advantage of her emotional vulnerability by saying, listen, I was able to figure it out. I'm sorry. We need to get to the factory. It's smart, and it really is just good. It's clever. While there is a slight bit more insistence than before, ultimately it's close enough to Jeremy. The only thing that gave XANA away was because he went in for a kiss again, even though they've never actually kissed before. So again, it's smart thinking, and it's a lot, and I like that. I like seeing that, and it's a good plan too. It's not directed. It's one of the, again, it's like when he took away Yumi's source DNA, source human DNA code, or what it's called. Sorry, her human DNA, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Again, all it takes is just pressing the right buttons, and people just do what you want them to do, and people just will do what they do normally, and it all fits perfectly into your plan. So seeing this episode really did work in that regard. Again, my biggest problems are probably how quickly it was resolved and how the tensions are just dropped like that. But again, part of me is upset by that. Part of me isn't, because again, I like that but no one ever figures out that there's a connection until Jeremy says that a tower's been activated. So I don't know. That part annoyed me. That part legitimately annoyed me. I feel like they should have at least figured something out, considering all the accusations being thrown around. But otherwise it's a good episode. I liked seeing the idea of this clone. I liked seeing the plan, and it did lead to some cute moments. Especially between Jeremy and Aelita, and that resolution I think was just sweet. Otherwise, and yeah, the idea of the clone being able to shapeshift and all that's still cool. I like stuff like that. So yeah, overall, yeah, good episode. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care. Also, you really should try Dairy Queen's dipping gravy. It's delicious. Try it with the chicken strips. It's just delicious. So yeah.